Mansfield, Ohio. Okay, guys.
Mansfield.
Okay, guys, another episode, Riding the Wave with Dave, and I got a special guest tonight, Tom DeWeese. And Tom, man, it's a pleasure to meet you, man.
Thank you.
And you just put on a heck of a presentation tonight here for the Mansfield Tea Party, and I see you got your book there, so hold your book up there so everybody can check it out and everything. Why don't you let everybody know what your presentation was all about tonight and give a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm the president of the American Policy Center. We've been around since about 1986, and our purpose is, to fight for limited government, free enterprise, individual liberty, and the issues that we have chosen to work on to go to those ends, particularly are private property rights, and that led us into fighting a lot of land grabs by the federal government, the environmental movement, the United Nations, and that has led us into the battle against Agenda 21. The UN's Earth Summit in 1992 created this that literally we believe is a complete transformation of our country away from limited government, free enterprise, and individual liberty to a top-down control, redistribution of wealth, and so forth. And that's what my presentation was tonight, to discuss that and show why we believe that, where it's coming from, and above all, how people are fighting back and the success we're having in turning that around.
Well, I can tell you tonight from listening to the presentation, and I'm pretty sharp. I follow a lot of these issues and stuff, but I mean, there's so much new information that you put out there, and that's why I encourage everybody tonight to be sure and watch the videos that we're going to put together. But you had a real warm reception, a nice turnout, and I didn't hear any of the naysayers out here. You weren't called a conspiracy guy once tonight.
I don't give them a chance to say. I say it ahead of time during my presentation. Yep. This is what they call me. This is why they call me that. But the fact of the matter is that those who are doing this are scrambling to change words, to change direction of things, to hide things. And as I said tonight, when I do something, I'm proud of it, and I'm happy to defend it and say why I'm doing it and why I think it's a good idea. And whenever you see a movement that is deliberately trying to hide what they're doing, trying to change the words if it gets too popular or too well known, I don't care what the issue is, you need to take a long look at that and ask the questions why.
Well, the big take home for me tonight, it was a recurring theme, and I'll let you illustrate, and of course everybody's going to be able to see exactly what we're talking about, was the control factor, because this is all about total control, and they want control of everything under the sun. So give the audience a little bit of flavor what you're going to be talking about tonight when they have a chance to watch your presentation and stuff about the control factor. And also you had a chance to talk a little bit about how mainstream media, they just don't want to cover this at all, do they?
Well, the mainstream media is starting to notice that our movement is growing.
Okay.
And just recently I was interviewed by the New York Times, and they said to me, we want to interview you to talk about the growing opposition to sustainable development. Well, to me that meant they wanted to know why people are angry, why things are happening like they are, and why people are rising up against it. That isn't what they wanted to know at all, and in fact the final article, the gist of it was that here are these serious, hard-working planners, professional people just trying to do their job, and all these darn protesters are just wasting their time. That was the gist of the article, and it's exactly what I expected from
And that was from the New York Times.
Front page, New York Times.
Surprise, surprise. That's the peanut gallery over there adding some commentary.
We're all shocked by this.
Shocked, Well,
so what are we supposed to do? What do you want us to do?
Hey, well, what's the biggest thing? I just heard a good question out there in the audience. What is the biggest thing you think that today's citizens like us, like Tea Party members, what can we do to really make a difference, and what would you like to see?
Well, the first thing, this is a vast issue. It covers every aspect of our lives. It is not only our property rights, it's our energy use, it's our water use. It affects your job, it can affect how many children you can have, it affects your children's curriculum in school and so forth. The first thing you have to do is educate yourself on it. You cannot get a couple of sound bites and go rushing into City Council and say you're implementing an Agenda 21 UN policy because they'll laugh you out of the room. What you need to do is start to look at the policies that they're putting in place. How does that affect you? Who is affected by that, and why? And begin to approach it that way. And we talk about it coming from the UN because we want people to know what the origin of it was. And Agenda 21 is being put together for one specific specific reason, is to create global governance.
Okay.
They are opposed to national sovereignty. They say that's a social injustice. They are opposed to of course, individual liberty or private property ownership and so forth.
Yeah.
They want it all controlled, and so that's why we talk about it. But now, as you, as a normal person getting into their city council, looking at what they're doing,
Okay.
you'll need to look at the actual policy and why does that affect people,
Okay.
and then begin to question it.
Good. Hey, go ahead real quick. Let everybody know all your websites and the different material you've got for sale and where people can find it. They can buy it online and what you got coming on down the pike and all that.
Okay. Well, first of all, American Policy Center's website is americanpolicy.org.
Okay.
And on that site, we've got about a 15-year archive of articles that I've written over the years for all these issues, everything from Agenda 21 in the United Nations and environmental movement, but also it includes illegal immigration and the education transformation that we've gone through, and the surveillance society. We're very concerned about the growing surveillance society.
It's everywhere.
National IDs and all that. Our other website is DeWeeseReport.com. That's
Okay.
DEWEESE report.com.
Okay.
My newsletter is available there. You can subscribe to it online.
Yeah,
there.
we need to hold up a copy of that, so make sure they get a shot of that and stuff. And that's where anybody can subscribe to that. And
Yeah, this
you
is
got
a
all kinds of.
monthly publication. We've been putting it out for about 17 years,
Okay.
and again, we've got a whole archives of these too. If you subscribe to it online, you can get into the archives as well. And of course, then my book, which is Now Tell Me I Was Wrong,
Yeah.
and that's available there as well. And this is a collection of articles I wrote over the last 15 years on all of those kind of issues. So we've got videos and so forth. The other thing we're doing is we're putting together a Stop Agenda 21 action kit. I designed this for activists across the country. I asked activists what they needed. The very question you just asked me, what do we do?
Right.
This will answer it. It's got manuals in it with all the history. It's got a workbook that with documents in it that people can use, handouts that they can make for their meetings.
Good.
It's got video presentations. It's got a PowerPoint presentation. So it'll teach you everything you need to know. That will very shortly be available on my website at americanpolicy.org, and we'll be off and running with it.
Good. Well, I'll tell you what, man, it's been a great evening. I want everybody to be sure and check out the videos we have tonight, K-Rose video and Riding Away with Dave. And thank you very much, man. Keep up the fight and stuff, and we'll be seeing you on down the road.
I'll do it.
There you go.
Thanks.
Right. And I always have people like give a little promo. This is Tom DeWeese, and I've been riding away with Dave. So go ahead in your words.
Yeah. This is Tom DeWeese. I've been riding away with Dave.
There you go. There you go. Mansfield, Ohio. Okay, guys.
Mansfield, Ohio.
Hey, thank you very much, man.
Thank
That was
you.
great. And
Thanks.
good luck, man. It's a great job you've been doing. And tonight was a great presentation.
Yes.
So.
Go with the power of law. Thomas Lovejoy, a science advisor to the Federal Department of Interior, said, quote, "We will map the whole nation, determine development for the whole country, and regulate it." And your local elected officials are helping to implement this insanity, yet they are quick to deny that such ideas have their origins on the international level, and they accuse me of wearing a tinfoil hat and hearing voices. Well, here's a voice I hear. Again, Maurice Strong said at the UN's Earth Summit, quote, "Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized nations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring it about?" That is the true agenda that we face. But how do you remove people from the land? There are many tools in place to stop human activity and grow the wilderness. Deny grazing and water rights on public lands. It becomes more difficult and more expensive to run the farm or the ranch, and eventually it goes out of business. Lock away natural resources by creating more national parks, and it shuts down the mines, and they go out of business. Call every mosquito-infested swamp and occasional mud puddle a wetlands, and you ban any development around it. Invent a spotted owl shortage and pretend it can't live in a forest where timber is cut. Shut off the forest, then when no trees are cut, there's nothing to feed the mills, and then there are no jobs, and they go out of business, and in the West, whole towns are dying because of it. The governor of Maryland is enforcing an agenda without a vote of the legislature called Plan Maryland that will lock away over 400 acres of land banned from any development. One of the key provisions of the policy is to ban septic tanks as a means to protect the Chesapeake Bay, even though there is no evidence whatsoever that septic tanks cause any problems to the Chesapeake Bay. The only result of this ban is to make it impossible to live on a rural area unless you want to spend several $1 million on your own government-approved water treatment system. Getting people off the rural lands and into the cities is the real purpose, not environmental protection. The Wildlands Project comes in many names and many programs. Wilderness areas, comprehensive land use plans, bikeways, greenways, heritage areas, land management, rails to trails, open space, wolf and bear reintroduction, conservation easements, and many more. Each of these programs is designed to make it just a little harder to live on the land, a little more expensive, a little more hopeless. In reality, the process is simply herding people off of rural land and into human habitat areas or our cities. The second path to sustainable development is called smart growth. They put a line around the city and they tell you no growth can take place outside of that line. Urban sprawl, they say disdainfully. They refuse to build more roads as a ploy to get you out of your cars and into public transportation, restricting mobility. New highways, they say, are feeders for more development. They even stop the widening of existing roads for the same reasons. So roads become overcrowded and gridlocked, and they blame development. Their new ploy is to force cars to share the road with bicycles. The complete street, they call it. In many smart growth communities, new apartment buildings now have no garages or parking lots. We don't need any stinking cars here. Smart growth creates an unusual restriction on space inside the controlled areas. So now there's a shortage of houses. And what happens? Prices go up. And that means that populations will have to be controlled because now there's a shortage of land. And that's why kindly, compassionate environmentalist Dr. Jacques Cousteau declared, in order to, quote, in order to stabilize world populations, we must eliminate 350,000 people per day. Sustainabilists call for an 85% reduction in human population. Now, when we're done here tonight, outside the door, I've made arrangements. Mary Ann, we've got containers of Kool-Aid out there. I'd like all of you to do your patriotic duty and take a drink, and I assure you there'll be no environmentalists standing in your way. 85% reduction in population. How's that to be done? Do we use the proven success of China's population control methods of forced abortions and sterilization? The Chinese, I can tell you, are huge supporters of sustainable development, and I'm quite sure they've got some ideas they'd be excited to share with us. Of course, comprehensive development plans are the tools of choice in every city in the nation to produce the proper smart growth community. Through these plans, energy and water use is tightly controlled, and individuals are being forced to live in denser communities that take up smaller tracts of land per housing unit. Planning advocates and government bureaucrats are forcing such planned communities across the state and across the nation, and those plans put severe controls on private property. The truth is, under sustainable development and smart growth, there can be no private property. It's all community property. The third way to sustainable development inside the human habitat areas, government is steadily being controlled by an elite ruling class called stakeholder councils. These are mostly NGO groups who, like thieves in the night, just show up to stake their claim to enforce their own private agendas. The function of legitimate elected government within the sustainable system is fast becoming little more than a rubber stamp to create and enforce the dictates of these councils. It is the demise of representative government. And the councils appear and grow almost overnight. You'll find watershed councils that regulate human action near every trickling stream, river, or lake. Meters are put on wells. Special action councils control home size, tree pruning or removal, even the color you can paint your home or the height of your grass. Historic preservation councils control development in downtown areas, disallowing expansion and new building. Once the councils are established, it becomes nearly impossible to discuss issues with your elected representatives. Instead, they will direct you automatically to the proper council or administration or department run by unresponsive, appointed hacks armed with their own political agenda. Regional governments are driven by government, not by people. These are run by non-elected bureaucrats that don't answer to the people. Elected officials become, again, little more than a rubber stamp to provide official approval to the regional bureaucracy. The Chattanooga, Tennessee Area Regional Council of Governments, for example, consists of at least 6 alphabet agencies of appointed bureaucrats. On their own, these non-elected bureaucrats have applied for a $2.5 million grant from the federal government's Sustainable Communities Regional Planning Grant Program. To comply, each participating government must sign a memorandum of agreement to develop a shared vision and to develop livable communities in all that applies. The people of Chattanooga have no idea that this has been submitted, and they have no say in the outcome. 16 counties and all the municipalities that they contain will be constrained by this grant application and the 40-year regional plan it produces. These non-elected councils fit almost perfectly the definition of a state soviet, a system of councils that report to an apex council and then implement a predetermined outcome. Soviets are the operating mechanism of a government-controlled economy, the exact opposite of our constitutional republic. And the fourth path to sustainable development, as I mentioned, are public-private partnerships. You hear the propaganda of the public-private partnerships nightly on your television as their commercials keep telling you to go green. The truth is, there would be very little legitimate green industry if not for the billions of dollars in grant money shelled out to the partnerships to develop alternative energy schemes. Alternative energy. Wind energy, for one, may well be the least sustainable and least eco-friendly of all electricity options. It probably requires more energy to manufacture, haul, and install these monstrous windmills in their transmission systems than that windmill will generate in its lifetime. Not only that, we're talking about protecting the environment. We have the Endangered Species Act that's supposed to protect endangered species. You know, the Audubon Society calls the windmills Cuisinarts in the air. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of birds are being destroyed as the forests of these windmills grow. But this is supposed to be about protecting the environment? In the name of sustainable development, the nation is investing everything in our future to enforce wind power, and solar power over real energy providers. Alternative energy amounts to less than 1% of our energy needs. And for every green job created, 2 in legitimate industry are lost because of green rules and regulations. America has now discovered that it has a near infinite amount of shale oil in literally every state. Rather than celebrate our good fortune to reduce gas prices and eliminate our dependency on foreign oil cartels, the sustainabilists are rushing in a near panic to block the drilling of shale oil. Moreover, recent government reports show we have more than 2 trillion barrels of untapped oil under American soil, untapped and banned because of sustainable policy. We have more oil than anybody else in the world. To the sustainabilist elite who loathe competition in free markets, such a change in the status quo is terrifying because their control is highly profitable for those industries that, as they take the tax money through the public-private partnerships. And now, there is a new kind of corporation being developed through public-private partnerships. It's called benefit corporations.
Imagine a legislated brotherhood of business where favored businesses get to go to the front of the line for permits, licenses, and opportunities merely because they agreed to advance the principles of sustainable development and Agenda 21. 6 states already have benefit corporations, including Hawaii, Virginia, Maryland, Vermont, New Jersey, and New York. And 5 more are in the process of making it part of their state legal corporate system, including California, Colorado, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. This policy will destroy free enterprise, and it will guarantee that we can't stop Agenda 21. Many Americans ask how dangerous international policies can suddenly turn up in local government, all seemingly uniform to those in communities across the nation and around the globe. The answer? Meet ICLEI, a nonprofit, private foundation dedicated to helping your mayor implement all these policies. Originally known as the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, ICLEI, today the group simply calls itself ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. They had to get the word international out of their name. In 1992, ICLEI was one of the groups instrumental in creating Agenda 21. ICLEI's mission is to implement Agenda 21 worldwide, and it has been having tremendous success. ICLEI is now operating in more than 600 cities in all 50 states. The group's shooting for 1,000 member cities in the next 3 years. Each of these cities pay dues to ICLEI to receive its programs. When local governments contract with ICLEI, they agree to implement Agenda 21 policy of sustainable development. And here's just some of the programs that ICLEI provides cities and towns in order to spread their own particular political agenda in the name of community service and environmental protection. They bring in software products and associated training, access to a network of experts, newsletters, conferences, and training workshops. They bring in toolkits for online resources. They bring in case studies, fact sheets, policy, and practice manuals. All of these tools are used to indoctrinate the employees in your city government or your county government so that all they will ever look at, all they will ever consider is sustainablest policy. And then there's the biggie, the notification of relevant grant opportunities. That's the important one. Money, which comes with severe strings attached. You see, ICLEI, along with Sierra Club, the Nation Conservancy, these other NGOs, work from the federal government, as I said, down to the state government, and they know they created these grant programs. They know what those grant programs are for. They know that as soon as that community takes that money, they've got it. Because now, because they have the money, they've got to implement these programs. Just as an example of what that means, as they keep telling us that none of this has anything to do with Agenda 21, it's just local. Here's a quote from the EPA's website concerning one of its grant programs. It says, quote, "The Sustainable Development Challenge Grant Program is also a step in implementing Agenda 21, the Global Plan of Action on Sustainable Development, signed by the United States at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. All of these programs require broad community participation to identify and address environmental issues," end quote. Can we make it any plainer? And please, elected officials, don't blame me for this. I didn't say it, the EPA did it. And keep in mind, your community does not have to be an ICLEI member in order to be affected by Agenda 21 and ICLEI policies. Around the nation, ICLEI partners with other established organizations like the American Planning Association and the International City-County Management Association, or the ICMA. And then there's the Renaissance Planning Group. There are hundreds of these groups all over the country. They work hand in hand with groups like the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National Governors Association, the National League of Cities, the National Association of County Administrators, and many more that your elected representatives probably belong to. These are the people who are making policy. These are the people your local officials trust to be mainstream. These are the true enemies of freedom in America. That's how these policies quickly spread across the nation as enforced regulations. And here's just some of the results of these efforts. Across the nation, state legislatures are passing laws requiring cities and towns to establish comprehensive development plans that include high-density urban development areas, control of energy and water use, control of transportation, making it more difficult to drive cars, perhaps forcing the acceptance of light rail and high-speed trains. These laws are now being used as a weapon to force sustainable development at a rapid rate across the nation. And here's some of what each of you can now expect from these plans that your city fathers say are making things better. One of the most popular tools now in use is to control energy use is the energy audit and building review. They establish quotas for electrical use and for heating and cooling pumps and water use. That means that government bureaucrats will come into your home or your office building and determine the amount of potential energy you should have. They will give you a list of recommendations necessary to bring your home into compliance. These may include the need for a new roof, new energy efficient appliances, new windows, etc. In Oakland, California, the City Council did just these things. And the result was an average cost to every single homeowner of at least $35,000. And if you don't comply, you will be fined and possibly unable to sell your home until you do. Across the nation, power companies, in partnership with government planners, are forcing the use of smart meters. These meters contain RFID chips. The technology enables the power company to keep track of how much power you are using and control, regulate, and ration your use of that electricity. They will set the temperature in your home. If they decide that you're using too much hot water for your showers or washing machines or too much air conditioning, your electricity will automatically be turned down or even off. There is now growing evidence that the smart meters are causing medical problems for some, as they are affected by the radiation that comes off of them. Others, of course, are experiencing a lack of power during peak usage. And of course, as with all things sustainable, energy costs are soaring. Those who protest that such meters are a violation of their property rights and freedom of choice are told that their only choice is to accept the meters or have no electricity at all. In Naperville, Illinois, where 16 residents refused the meters out of 275 that were targeted to get them, the response by the Naperville city government, they are now sending police escorts out to accompany the meter installers. This is not freedom. There's no freedom from sustainable policy. And it just keeps getting worse. Under the title of sustainable farming, the planners are excited about a new sustainable style of tractor to pull the plows. It's called a team of oxen. I don't laugh, they're serious. There is a college in Vermont, Green Mountain College, which teaches sustainable farming, and they feature the use of a herd of oxen. Students are paying for an education to learn Davy Crockett's farming techniques. There are now policies being advocated to place taxes on the use of toilet paper, on the number of miles you drive in your car, and on the use of plastic bags. Next on the agenda is to radically abandon the flush toilet. They call it one of the world's most destructive habits. Shame on them. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has made a donation of $3 million to 8 universities to reinvent the flush toilet. I believe that we should work to reinvent the personal computer to reject Microsoft software. The EPA is now providing funding to NGO groups to run training programs for people to photograph and report neighbors who may be committing crimes against the environment. This summer, Obama signed Executive Order 13575 to create the White House Rural Council. The council is a list of the most aggressive agencies and departments of the U.S. government. It will bring an army of regulators into rural areas to completely control every decision of land use, farming, and development. Farmers who have been feeding America for over 200 years will not be able to make a single decision without permission and massive paperwork from bureaucrats from over 25 agencies. On top of each other, it won't just be one agency. You might comply to this agency, but 24 more over here have some other idea. The result can only be food shortages and higher prices. Several cities are now taking grant money to create a plug-in deployment program using your tax dollars to assure the city is ready for electric cars. The program openly admits that it's all necessary because otherwise people won't buy plug-in vehicles. You know, at least under the free enterprise system, the oil companies paid for and provided their own filling stations after free Americans made their own choice of what kind of car to drive. Welcome to the utopia of sustainable development. This is Big Brother at its worst, and it's planned control enforced by your local officials, your local representatives, in partnerships with groups like ICLEI, an organization whose vice chairman Harvey Rubin said, quote, individual rights will have to take a back seat to the collective. Now I ask you, would any of your elected officials admit to enforcing communism in your community? No. Then why are they so eager to be in partnership with an organization which does? The United States is not a global village run by elders who hand down the rules from on high. We are a nation of individuals whose rights are supposed to be protected and guaranteed by the representatives that we elect. We demand accountability from them. However, global forces which do not accept the unique American form of government sneak behind the curtain, avoiding controversy and honest debate. The only possible result can be a tyranny over a powerless electorate stripped of their rights, their property, and their self-determination. Global warming has been the excuse for the hysteria, but true science now shows that that is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on humankind. So there's no need for these dire policies to cut back our carbon footprint by forcing us to lock away land and resources and live in high-density cracker boxes. We all want a clean environment. However, what we're objecting to here is not environmental protection, but the process that is being used in its name. There's nothing local or innocent or normal about it. Again, it starts at the international level, created by ideological zealots, working hand in hand through massive international meetings sponsored by the United Nations. And at those massive meetings, documents are carefully prepared for the signatures of leaders of every nation, including the United States, and once signed, the bureaucracies of our federal government use those documents like Agenda 21 as a blueprint for legislation and regulations. To write that legislation, the bureaucrats work hand in hand with the same NGOs who wrote it in the first place, and then these same UN-sanctioned NGOs, such as the Sierra Club and the Nature Conservancy and ICLEI, team up with groups like the American Planning Association to apply pressure and make sure local city councils and governor and county supervisors toe the line. The resulting non-elected boards, councils, and regional governments appointed by an ecoligarchy answerable to no one is the perfect definition of a Soviet, a centrally controlled economy. And I assure you, we cannot restore our unique American republic if our communities are little Soviets. Nor can we protect the environment if our economy is destroyed and free men are unable to make choices other than survival in a sustainablist tyranny. The sustainabilists are using our carbon footprint as a measure of our guilt. One fact is sure: if you have no carbon footprint, you are dead. Elected officials, can no longer play ignorant about the origins of their policies. America is dying while they're denying. It is their elected duty to represent the people and protect them from these piranhas that are devouring our way of life. To save it, you must take action. And understand that the main battle to stop Agenda 21 and sustainable development is not being fought in Congress, right here on the local level. We must stand up and protest at every city council meeting and county commissioner meeting, at every planning board and every consensus meeting. Fight the creation of non-elected councils, commissions, or boards, because they can and they will be used as a weapon against your ability to deal and reason with local government and protect your rights. Above all, refuse federal or state money or new sustainable programs and get rid of the old ones. And if ICLEI and the American Planning Association are now running things in your town, throw them out. Stop payment of dues, disband anything that they have built, and start looking for some high-grade tar and feathers. And if your elected representatives continue to ignore you while playing footsie with those leading this tyranny, then you must force them out of office. Your survival depends on it. Nameless, faceless bureaucrats wielding power in the back rooms, untouched and unseen, is not freedom. The sustainabilists now haunt the upper levels of the federal government, our state houses, and our city council chambers. In these very dangerous times, it is easy to despair over our nation's future. They have achieved many of their goals, but they have not yet won. Their whole agenda is built on a house of cards that stands only when you are ignorant and compliant. And their arrogance and their impatience to force the policy into place is resulting in a stir of the American people. We are beginning to move the rock of freedom uphill. We are on the threshold of great change because the word is quickly spreading about Agenda 21. After 18 years of issuing warnings about Agenda 21, finally, opposition is being heard. In the past 12 months, the following communities have taken official action to revoke their contracts with ICLEI, starting with Carroll County, Maryland, then Amador County, California, then Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, then Edmond, Oklahoma, then Las Cruces, New Mexico, then Spartanburg, South Carolina, then Albemarle County, Virginia, the home of Thomas Jefferson, then Plantation, Florida, then James City County, Virginia, where America basically started in Jamestown, then Lexington, Virginia. We can now add Carver, Massachusetts, Pinellas County, Florida, Garland, Texas, Sarasota County, Florida, Abington, Virginia, Clallam County, Washington, and Chatham County, North Carolina, and most recently, Mammoth County and Somerset counties in New Jersey have all taken steps to throw ICLEI out of their communities and taken the first step to getting rid of sustainable development. In fact, we believe that at least 54 communities have pulled out of ICLEI since January of 2011, while only 17 communities have become members. That is a net reduction of 34 communities. They've all taken that vital first step in ending Agenda 21 in their community, but it is only a first step. And there's more. In the Washington State Legislature, my friend Representative Matt Shea is succeeding in establishing an anti-Agenda 21 caucus among legislators. He now has 8 members. In Bonner County, Idaho, County Commissioner Cornell Razor is succeeding in establishing a property rights council as an official arm of the county government. It will oversee all legislation coming before the county commission and determine if it violates private property rights. And that is an idea that is quickly spreading across the nation. Activists in Tennessee are already moving to implement property rights councils in their communities. The state legislature in Wisconsin now has a bill before it to allow local community governments to repeal comprehensive development plans that they were forced to take under smart growth legislation, and it also eliminates the grant program that was set up to help finance the smart growth policies. The bill has passed the House and it's headed for the Senate. In Florida, The state legislature has passed and the governor has signed legislation to repeal smart growth legislation. That means that now the counties are free from state mandates. This is landmark legislation. And finally, on January 13th of this year, the Republican National Committee unanimously passed a resolution entitled Exposing United Nations Agenda 21. Revolution against a sustainable development is taking place in every corner of the nation. In a panic, ICLEI is now rushing to cleanse its website of any mention of the United Nations. Our opponents are trying their best to ridicule us and paint our movement as extremists. It's not working. We are getting stronger every day. For the first time since I started down the road to expose Agenda 21, I believe we will succeed in crushing it. You know, recently I watched the film Robin Hood, starring Russell Crowe, and I was struck by the similarities between England of the 13th century and today's America. It was a time of serfs who had no rights, no property, and only poverty in their future. It was a time when the king owned everything from land to livestock. And it was a time when tax collectors could literally confiscate everything you had in the name of the king, leaving you with virtually nothing. The people attempted to rise up, demanding that the king give them legal rights from which they could be guaranteed the ability to benefit from the fruits of their own labor. The people of the 13th century in England knew what they had to do if ever they were going to be free. The slogan under which they organized was, "Rise and rise again until lambs become lions." Today, as we face an ever-growing tyranny by a Congress and a president, as well as elected officials at every level of government who ignore you, lie to you, and deny their actions that you can plainly see, Americans, for the first time in our history, face the same evil those Englishmen faced so long ago. And so today, I appeal to you to take the same resolve today. Begin that effort to rise up and continue to fight again and again at City Council and County Commission meetings. Take their ridicule and return to fight again. Stand up to these self-proclaimed stakeholders and outsider NGOs, the carpetbaggers of our day. Reach out to your neighbors and help them see what a threat Agenda 21 is to their freedom. Never give in. Rise and rise again until lambs become lions. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Tom at this point?
Yeah.
Tom, thank you very much for your time. I live in the Garden of East. I'm a director of a research center at Ohio State University. And even though my area of research is workforce development, I'm also involved internationally. Every conference I go to, sustainable development is infused throughout that conference. In fact, it's often the main topic of the conference. If I gave a talk like you gave tonight, I'd be sporting one of those designer tarred feather suits like that you were talking about. So, given the situation that I'm in, I'm surrounded by people who are really pushing, really pushing this stuff. What would you suggest would be an approach for me to take? One thing that I do plan on doing, I'm having a conference, an international conference in workforce development in August, and the topic's going to be labor market analysis. And I'm going to give a talk on green job labor market analysis, very realistic talk. So that would be one way to approach it. Do you have any other suggestions about what you do in an environment where you're surrounded by...
When you're in these meetings, and these guys are talking about it up front, and what happens in those meetings? Does anyone ever stand up and question, well, wait a minute, you see, it's a herd mentality.
Oh, yeah.
The consensus process, and that's what it is. They're using that on you as well there. They use it in every single public meeting we have, and not a discouraging word is to be heard. There are people in that audience just like you. They're afraid to speak out because they're alone. Just every once in a while, I'm not saying massive attacks, because you'll have your head handed to you, there's no question about it. But just a well-placed question once in a while that gets somebody else thinking. You do that a couple of times, you go out for a break after the meeting, you're going to have somebody come up to you and say, you know, I find that too. And then you have an outlet. And then you get another one and another one. They can't stand any kind of questioning, any kind of opposition. And that, because it's all built on a house of cards, all lies. They know that. I said something earlier, if I'm doing something, I do it because I believe in it and I'm proud of it. And I will stand up and defend it wherever I am. When you start hearing people changing the words and hiding what they're doing and ridiculing anybody who questions them and not giving them an answer to an ability to say anything, right there, whatever you think of it, of the policy, that should make you question the legitimacy of it and whether it's a good thing or not. If you're not allowed to debate it and talk about it, there's something wrong there and they're hiding something. But I really believe that if you could find little points where you could just make a little dig here, a little there, just asking a question, you'll find some allies, and pretty soon you might be able to get enough people to really start to question. So that's the short answer. This has nothing to do with the United Nations. It's all a conspiracy theory. But it's the bouncing ball, because Agenda 21 is a soft law policy that's not a treaty, so you can't point at Congress and say, the Senate ratified this, so it's a law of the land. So therefore, they say, well, it's just voluntary. Let me tell you about voluntary with these programs. Back before Agenda 21, we were fighting the environmentalists and trying to take the ranchers and the farmers and big, huge land grabs. Prior to this, the term, what they would write in all the legislation is, to take that land, they must be a willing seller. You know what a willing seller is? It's the guy who crawls out from under the heap, bleeding to death, saying, okay, take it. I've got another willing seller. That's how Agenda 21 is voluntary. That is a lie. It is not voluntary, because this army of NGOs are coming down into your local community. Their connections are from the very top, the same organization. I cannot say it enough. That is the key to it all. That's the bouncing ball. So, yeah.
Tim Work, Richland County Commissioner. As I've been commissioner now for 8 years, it seems as though I hear these same words come from everything from Ohio State Cooperative Extension to regional planning, from economic development groups. It's like, do they all have
It all permeates.
do they have a book that they work out of? I mean, I made a...
Basically, the American Planning Association, their guide.
I made a comment to the economic development fellows, and please, I do not say this against trying to get our economics in better order in Richland County, but I said, in your plan, you don't have anything to do with agriculture in our area, and that was what's business in Richland County. And he said, well, just send to Pennsylvania and get a pie that tells us how to deal with that. And I said, well, what the hell is a pie? I mean, where do you send in? Where is this blueprint?
We call it a plan in a box. The plan comes in a box. This is what ICLEI does. Yeah. You've got ICLEI, you've got American Planning Association, the Renaissance Planning Group. There are hundreds of these groups, and they all interact with each other, and so they bring it, and it is all you're allowed to think about now. And what's driving that? The grants that they take. You may take a grant to say, we're going to take this money. We want to revitalize downtown. That's what we want to know. What does revitalize downtown mean to you? Give it a cleanup, maybe pave the roads, fix the sidewalks. What does it take to revitalize? There might be some economic ideas there to bring some business down. That's not what they mean.
They all use the same words: stakeholders, council of governments, people that are not held to office. And one other point that maybe may go against what you say, but right now the Kasich administration wants the counties to adhere to a plan where they usurp our authority for fixing roads, contracting, and things like this. They want to take the control away from the local government, but we we still bear the liability for all
Yeah,
this.
that does not go against what I'm saying, and it's very much part of it. And one of the excuses that they use is that you got to control development because, hey, this developer is going to build all these housing units here. We've got to pay for the infrastructure. We've got to bring in the new roads. We've got to have water. We've got to have all that. Well, excuse me, but every one of those new houses is now going to pay property taxes. So you're going to get revenue that way. Every one of those people living there are going to be buying things in the community, and there's taxes on that as well. You're bringing more people into the community, you're getting more money. So the excuse that we can't have development because it'll cost us money is about as bogus as it gets. So we create money by having development. So. Yeah.
Well, I've got a question regarding your experience now with mainstream media. Because it's my opinion now that the last thing that they want is the exposure in mainstream media, and that's why I think it's very important now that the alternative media, the new media online, is out there to cover what you're talking about, because what this gentleman was saying when he's at the conferences and stuff like that, if you have the little guys there covering this, that can drive the mainstream media because somebody's putting it out there, and now when it's online, it's pretty much everywhere. So I'd like to hear, Tom, your experience with mainstream media, and if you think what I'm saying.
Well, just a week ago yesterday, I was interviewed for an article that appeared in the New York Times last Sunday, front page. And I knew what this was going to be. I really attempted, I think I was telling you earlier, I attempted to talk to the reporter and say, we're going about this all wrong. What we're experiencing here is we've got people who are real victims of these programs, and just like the New York Times history, that it won Pulitzer Prizes for exposing civil rights violations back in the 60s and Appalachia and the poor there, and the common denominator of all that was people who were oppressed by their government. And you won Pulitzer Prizes for that. I said, we've got people now who are being shut down in their businesses, farmers, people using unprocessed milk, and that sort of thing. And I said, I can connect you with these victims. I can connect you with elected officials who know full well what's going on there, and so forth. And I said, you know what? We can create something great if we work together. Her response to me was, we've already talked to enough people about this article. So what was the gist of the article? All it said was, these honest, hard-working planners are trying to do their job, and all these protesters are just wasting their time. What a shame. That was the entire gist of the article. So, but we have, the experience we've had with the internet, that's the key to it. Mainstream media, that's what mainstream media does, and their stories are always that bubble-headed. Basically, has no substance.
Well, I think to help you out, I think the whole problem with mainstream media is they want to control the subject, the topic, and the language. And that's what they're all about. And that's why it's so important nowadays for everybody to turn to the little guys, to the new media, because that's where the real message is going to be at, and that's where we really have a chance to make a difference. So, like I say, tonight I think it's going to be a perfect example, because we've got a guy out here working hard, and myself, and we're going to report on this, and we're going to cover it. It's going to be up online, so when you guys go home in another couple days or next week, you'll be able to tell your friends, families, etc. Hey man, check Tom out and see what he had to say. It's all right there, and then you guys make your own decision.
We through emails and YouTube and Facebook, there are at least 5 anti-Agenda 21 pages on Facebook that I know of, and that has helped us get information out in a great way. Articles, what's really funny, we're doing this thing for 18 years, and articles that I wrote ages ago. And I've been out speaking so much, I haven't had time to really sit down and write something of great substance. So I've been revamping these articles to put them out, and it's all new to everybody now. And so that it just goes far and wide, on websites and so forth. So, without the Tea Party movement, we would not be making the progress we're making. But back in 2009, I saw as the Tea Party began to come together, they're out there, protesting and rallies against taxes and against the Fed and against the health care issue and all that.
Nobody's talking about Agenda 21. So I wrote an article, and I said, without this information, the Tea Party cannot restore the Republic. You cannot restore the Republic if your local community is a little Soviet. And when I put that out, I mean, I can't take all the credit for everything that happened, but that particular article just soared through the Tea Party movement. And today, it is probably one of the top 2 issues that the Tea Party works on. And that's why we're having the success we're having. So.
Put it on. Okay, here we are in Mansfield, Ohio, and I am speaking with the official
Founder.
Founder.
Yeah, founder, coordinator,
Do
jack
it
of
all.
all trades.
Yeah, you'll be turning out the lights tonight, right?
Yeah, folding chairs.
Janitor or whatever. Marianne
Gazeki.
Gazeki.
Yeah.
There you go. And I'm a professional. Yeah, all right. But hey, I'll tell you what, it's been a nice night tonight.
It was
you
good.
had a special guest. Why don't you let everybody
It was
know
terrific.
who everybody's going to watch on our
Yeah,
video?
we had Tom DeWeese, who is the founder and president of the American Policy Center, and we were just thrilled that he was willing to come to Mansfield and spend the night with us. It was terrific.
It was terrific.
Yeah,
A real
it
nice
was.
turnout, and boy, did he have a lot of good information or what?
Boy, scary stuff,
Oh,
isn't it?
wow. I know.
It's really. But I like that he said he's putting together like an action toolkit for us. I'm excited to see that, and we'll get that out on our email. Make sure everybody knows how to get a hold of that. And I thought it was very interesting. We had a county commissioner here, and all the buzzwords that Tom was talking about. We were talking afterwards. He says, "Oh my gosh, I've been hearing these words for years, and they all say the same words."
Yeah, that's
so
right.
these people are all being trained and indoctrinated and the whole deal. He walked out of here just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a powerful night. And before we go, I want you to be sure and give a plug out for your site. Let everybody know about all your websites.
MansfieldTeaParty.com, or you can email me at mansfieldteaparty@gmail.com. But the website also has contact information. We have a section on our website about Agenda 21.
Okay.
So I have articles on there, like
Yeah.
all that stuff that's going on in Maryland, which is crazy. The stuff going on in Texas, of all places, where they're trying to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And, of course, California's a hotbed.
Good.
for
Well, and you're going to be having a lot more stuff throughout the year, so we'll be staying in touch.
Absolutely.
And let everybody know that we just started.
We got a long way to go.
And we're gonna need a bigger boat too.
A lot more cookies.
Okay, thank you very much. There you go. Okay, that's a wrap. Finally, Roy, you ready to head on out the highway?